But anyway, we're here on July the 2nd, and like I said, I think this is episode 55. For those of you who are keeping count, I know I am to some degree. I've had a couple people tell me that some of the episodes tend to be a little long winded. Um, One guy told me, or actually, two people told me, when I posted the last episode I'm in a Facebook group called Promote Your Podcast, and I put it in there, and somebody put a frowny face next to it, the last episode, and said, the last thing we need is another person spouting their opinions for 40 minutes. Um, and I don't take those things to heart. I just try to tell things as they really are. And I figured 40 minutes is not too much to ask. Because I just care. No, but, what are you going to say to something like that? I mean, every person who has a video on YouTube seems to think that, their opinion is more important than everybody else's, and uh, I need to shove my opinion in everybody's face and spout on and on for an hour or 45 minutes or what have you. Look, I mean, you can take my opinion for whatever it is. The only reason that I created this podcast is because I really was looking around at the world around me, and I just saw that there are a lot of things going on that I think that I have issues with, that I think are genuine, real problems. And 40 minutes is not enough time to unpack any of the issues that are really going on. I just watched a video with Jordan Peterson where the title of the video on YouTube is called, Who Dares Admit that, or Who Dares Say That God Exists, or something like that. And what Jordan Peterson was talking about, how he started the lecture, was bemoaning the state of a lot of interviews today, where he felt really frustrated by um, some of these interviews where they ask him questions, really deep philosophical questions like, does God exist? Do you believe in God? And he was saying, like, you don't have the time necessary to respond to a question like that. A minute or 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes is not enough time to really deal with these very deep issues. Now, I am in no way saying that I'm on the level of a Jordan Peterson, far from it. There's a lot of people posting videos on YouTube or podcasts or whatever that are far more intelligent than I am and know a lot more about these things than I do. But the point of the matter is that I really am spending a lot of time trying to learn about the issues that are going on today, and what's causing them. What really concerns me is that I don't think that people today really are looking at the root cause of the issues today. And when I say that, that's a very broad statement. The issues today. What could I possibly be referring to? I mean, you say that to one person in the street, and it's going to mean something entirely different to somebody else. Somebody who has no concept of what's going on in politics isn't going to think about all the corruption in the government, the polarization of the two parties, how they're both warring for power, the issues at the border, woke politics, the PC political correctness culture, the reduction of free speech on campuses, abortion, human rights, civil rights. They're not going to think about those things. If they're obsessed with sports, they might bemoan the fact that Colin Kaepernick brought politics and political correctness into the NFL, and therefore dealt a death blow to one of our more pure forms of entertainment out there, an entertainment form that we all use to escape, which is now been, turned political like everything else in this country. Um, or if you talk to somebody who's Muslim, they might think, well, the issues going on today are directly related to my immigrant experience, or a Latino or whoever. If you talk to a transgender, they might say the issues today are have to do with intersectionality, or woke politics, or the bigotry and bias against transgender people, and so on. So there's a wide variety of issues going on today, and frankly, I want to talk about all of them. I think all of them, though, if you really get to the core issue, it's our humanity that is the problem, and that's kind of what I'm trying to address with this podcast. And that and free speech. I started this out really because I saw what a lot of people see going on, and that's that conservative voices, whether you want to acknowledge this or not, are being censored on the internet. Um, at this point, it's undeniable. After Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, all them have fallen by the wayside. It's undeniable that conservative voices and Christian voices are being censored. So I wanted to do my uh, my small part to do what I could to stand up for what I thought was right. And that's not as heroic as I make it sound. I know that. And I'm not trying to sound heroic. I'm just saying that's the whole point of what this podcast is. These are things I care about because I think they matter. And I think the one thing that has really fallen by the wayside today is truth. I don't think people really care about truth, and I think that's the ultimate problem in our society. What is true, and do people believe it or not? Are they looking for it, or are they trying to suppress it? And I think in today's world, especially particularly in the West, um, it's undeniable that truth as a concept is being rejected and thrown out and suppressed. Um, we are not a country that is interested in the concept of truth. As Pontius Pilate said to Jesus, what is truth? But he didn't say it, asking, like, tell me what is truth. No, it was a very cynical way of asking the question, as if scoffing, there is no truth. What ultimately is truth? Almost a mocking way of asking it. So I think that's the main problem, is people really don't care about whether something is true or not. And they have no interest in it, and they particularly have no interest in it when it infringes on their concept of reality. And I think that's demonstrably being proven today, with a lot of the ideological warfare that is going on in this country, from the trans community to the gay rights community. I'm all for these people living their lives in a legal perspective, but from a moral point of view, they're running smack against the way God designed the world to be. Um, what I would call reality, and they're running smack up against it, like running headfirst into a concrete wall, and then denying that the wall is there. That's how I see it, and that is truth. Truth is reality. Um, but anyway, um, sorry to ramble. This episode, though, is going to be a little uncomfortable, probably for me and a lot of other people out there. But it's something that needs to be talked about because, like a lot of other things that I've mentioned in some of my episodes, it plays a very crucial role in, I think, the disintegration of our society and the West at large, and worldwide, actually. Um, any country where this topic that I'm about to talk about has infiltrated, it's disintegrated, I think, the country, the moral values of the country. And what I want to talk about is pornography. Um, I think porn. Uh, there's a lot of different things we could say about porn. Um, the one I think first off, there's a kind of embarrassment that most people, excuse me, have, when talking about porn. You don't want to admit whether you've ever watched it or not. You don't want to admit whether you struggle with it. It's embarrassing. Um, but the truth of the matter is that for a lot of people, probably millions of people across America, at least according to the statistics I've read, millions of people across the West, this isn't just, something that they look at for entertainment value from time to time. This is uh, plummeted into a genuine addiction, and it's an addiction like any other addiction that has severe consequences, I think. And these consequences are only just now really starting to surface in society. Um, I but I think unlike a lot of other addictions, this one really has the potential to undermine our social fabric, our sense of self, the way God intended, human beings to deal with each other on a respectful level. Um, might as well just dive into it. Like, as a teenager, I'm sure anybody would admit that they were exposed to pornography. When you're at that age, you really, your hormones are raging. You're first starting to recognize that women are attractive, and it can be really hard not to view that kind of material, especially in a society now where it is so widely available. And that's the thing that's so tragic about it, is how widely available pornography is now. I'm going to get more into what actually pornography is and the effects of it, but it needs to be noted how widely available and how permeated our society is with pornography. Um, I have a Juno email account. I know nobody uses Juno anymore. My email address makes mention of the fact that I started the account in 2004, so that tells you how long Juno's been around, and I really don't think anybody uses it anymore. But be that as it may, even when I go and check my email on Juno, on the right hand column are literally, and it's, my wife told me it's for a clothing line, but there's women with like pasties on over their breasts, just covering like their nipples. This is on Juno email. I mean, it's pornography, really. This isn't like a J.C. Penney's catalog type of, when you flip through that, as I had seen when I was young. That's the way a lot of kids get introduced to porn, through like J.C. Penney's catalog of the bra pictures, or Victoria's Secret or something like that. Stuff that's supposed to be for adults, just that are buying clothes, but to a kid that's 14 or 15, that can be the introduction into a dark world, and that's what I mean by it's just kind of everywhere. But anyway, about Juno, like, these weren't pictures that were kind of like just, a woman modeling a particular style of bra. These were very sexualized pictures, with women that had just like tape over just the nipple part of their breast. I mean, that's on an email site, just an email site that anybody could be using. I could have been 6 years old and created that email address and be viewing that. A lot of these porn sites out there, what's particularly damning about them is they don't really require any verification of age in order to view the content. Anyone can type in, naked women on Google and come up with 50,000 triple X sites of the most hardcore pornographic material that is out there. Um, and a lot of the porn that is out there today is of a kind that is particularly dark. There's really dark stuff on there now. It's not just back when porn first got started, you had like the Playboy magazines of just the naked centerfolds on it in front of a pool, or an Italian countryside, beautiful countryside and a beautiful naked woman. That was Playboy's whole thing, these glamorous, tasteful nudes, as they called them. Well, it's not like that anymore. Now, what is out there is bondage, gangbangs, really violent stuff. And imagine how a young, impressionable child who is just growing up in the world, first understanding the differences between men and women and how they interact, no, has no concept of sex, and his first introduction to that is a gangbang or just a man hitting a woman. There are porn videos, many. Not that I've seen them all, but I've read about them. I did some research on this. There are porn videos that really get as close as they can to what rape would be like visually. A man coming in and just really violently throwing a woman down on the bed, and then at first the woman resists. So this is like a real rape. And then as the video progresses, she starts to like what he's doing and be turned on by it. That is the most sick thing that you can possibly show, and especially a young child, but anybody really, because it gives the impression that A, rape is okay, and B, if you start raping a girl, eventually she'll get turned on and enjoy it and respond sexually to it. I mean, that is total depravity, and it's you can view that without any proof of age. A 13-year-old can go onto any porno site and view that right now with no problem. No credit card. They don't charge you, and even the sites that do charge you have been bootleg and pirated 1,000 times over to where you can watch them for free anywhere you want to. So this is, and it teaches kids, again, I go back to the children are the ones that are being damned by the way we're running society now, the way sin is being accepted as just this casual thing. There's a lot of people now that view pornography as just this thing you do in the privacy of your own home, masturbation, whatever, and as long as you're not going out and raping anybody, it's okay. You could be married, have a whole family, but spend 4 or 5 hours a day in this dark, dingy basement looking at other naked women other than your wife, and that's perfectly okay. That's adultery. Jesus said that if you look at another woman lustfully, you've committed adultery in your heart. It's the same sin, whether you act it out or not. Hey, look, I point the finger at as always, I will say I'm as guilty as anybody. I don't struggle with it to the extent now that I used to, but it's very hard when you go in to check your email and you see something like that. It's hard to turn away from it, or not to look, or not to be tempted to then go and look something up. I acknowledge this. I'm human. I struggle with things just like anybody else does. The difference now is I really do see it as this evil. I see it as sin, and it's wrong, and it needs to be fought against. And the way it's being put out there in society right now is really screwing our kids up. When they have access to this stuff, to bondage porn, to some of what they call humiliation porn, where a woman is intentionally humiliated. What do you think this is teaching our kids about monogamy, about safe sex? There are no condoms in these porno videos. I read recently that the porn industry is trying to put condoms into some of their videos, but the public, from what I also read in the same article, has been largely not favorable to that, and so they're not doing it. So there aren't condoms in these. Not that you should go and have sex with everybody just because there's a condom. That doesn't justify it in any way. But I'm just saying they're not even teaching safe sex. That's besides the way that it teaches young children that view this stuff, the way it teaches them to view women in a certain way, that women are sexual objects. It is total bull and bunk when you hear porn actresses tell the camera and tell people in interviews that this empowers women. This does nothing of the sort. This damns women. This totally degenerates women It turns women into a sex object. It turns women. It teaches men that women are only there to be tossed onto the bed, and in some cases just rape. Just take it. You know, that's what it's teaching men. And even the more tasteful, what they would call soft core pornography, is still teaching men that women are there as a sex object. Is it any wonder that the divorce rates are so high? I want to read some of these statistics real quick. This isn't going to be a tremendously long episode. I know I don't want to drag this out too long, but here's just some statistics on porn, just the porn industry and the way it kind of operates here in the country, and just some facts that probably nobody is aware of. Just here's some. So 28,258 users are watching pornography every second. $3,075.64 is spent on porn every second on the internet. 88% of scenes in porn films contain acts of physical aggression, and 49% of scenes contain verbal aggression. So it's not only that men are physically, taking sex from the women, but they're also, and I admit I've struggled with this, so I've seen some of these videos, and the way the men talk to the women is incredibly demeaning. They call them very abusive. They talk to them very abusively, like you're a dirty so and so. Oh, you like that? You dirty. It's disgusting the way they talk to the women in these videos, and the way the woman responds in the video typically is, "Yeah, I'm dirty this and that." It's disgusting. So it gives young men the idea that you should talk to women this way, and not only should you talk to women this way, because that's how you should talk to them, that's how a man should, but a woman will respond positively when you do that. I mean, this is horrifying. 1 in 5 mobile searches are for pornography. Um, Let me see. I want to go through some of these. 90% of teens and 96% of young adults are either encouraging, accepting, or neutral when they talk about porn with their friends. 55% of adults 25 and older believe porn is wrong, or just 55%. Teens and young adults 13 to 24 believe not recycling is worse than viewing pornography. And that cuts right to the quick here as far as what I think the issue is largely in our society, because we've rejected objective morality. And I realize the light's failing here. You'll have to forgive me. I had a long day at work, so I have a light in this room where I'm recording, and it's getting very dark outside. There's not much I can do about it, so just bear with me. For those of you that are listening to this or watching the video on YouTube, one day I'll invest in one of those actual lights they use in film production or what have you. But in the meantime, I have a lamp, and it's getting dark outside, so sorry. But anyway, getting back to this, only 43% of teens believe porn is bad for society, compared to 31% of young adults 18 to 24, 51% of millennials, 44% of Gen Xers, and 59% of boomers. So large chunks of our society are perfectly okay with pornography and don't see an issue with it. And that's because with this relativistic way we have of viewing morality in society, basically the Aleister Crowley Satanist way of looking at it, which is, and it harm no one, do what thou wilt. So as long as you're not physically harming another person, then your act is not immoral. This totally ignores the heart and the inner motives of a human being, which is the big problem I have with like the atheist attempt to define morality apart from God. But that's, a topic for another podcast. Here's a interesting porn in the church stats. 1 in 5, and this is insane, 1 in 5 youth pastors and 1 in 7 senior pastors use porn on a regular basis and currently are struggling with it. That's more than 50,000 U.S. church leaders. That's freaking crazy. 1 in 5 youth pastors, 1 in 7 senior pastors. 43% of senior pastors and youth pastors say they have struggled with pornography in the past. 64% of Christian men and 15% of Christian women say they watch porn at least once a month. So you start to understand the severity of the issue, that this is something that our church leaders are admit to struggling with. And big shock with all the sexual scandals going on in the Southern Baptist convention churches, the Roman Catholic Church, obviously the most obvious sinner out of all of them. Only 7% of pastors report their church has a ministry program for those struggling with porn, which, if there's any pastors that ever watch this, I think, if you take these stats seriously, something needs to be done in the church to have a ministry specifically dedicated to people struggling with this, because it is, as I said before, absolutely everywhere. You check your email and there's pornography. You go to a PG-13 movie anymore and there's women in thongs dancing on yachts, giving the impression again that success is demonstrated by the amount of naked women dancing around you as you shower money on top of them. And these are in PG-13 movies, not rated R, not rated X movies. You can go and watch one of the Fast and Furious PG-13 movies, and there will be women in thongs dancing next to sexy street racer cars with young men and their abs, shirtless with their abs, showering money and champagne over naked women, half-naked women. 51% of male students and 32% of female students first viewed porn before their teenage years. The first exposure to pornography among men is 12 years of age. On average, 71% of teens hide online behavior from their parents. And what a shock that is. Pornography and marriage statistics. 68% of divorce cases involved one party meeting a new lover over the internet. 56% involved one party having a, quote, an obsessive interest in pornographic websites, and 70% of wives of sex addicts could be diagnosed with PTSD. Prolonged exposure to pornography leads to diminished trust between intimate couples, belief that promiscuity is the natural state, and a lack of attraction to family and child raising. Well, that's not a shock at all. I mean, who could be surprised that if you continually view pornography on a daily basis, that it would totally erode your monogamous drive, and you would begin to think that you should seek out women that will actually respond to the sexual desires that you see acted out on camera. That's the other thing that's really wrong with it, is it ingrains you with this idea that women or that sex should be acted out in the ways that is displayed in these videos, so that if say your wife or your fiance or whatever, well, you should only really be having sex with your wife, but your wife is unwilling or uncomfortable to perform some of these sex acts in these videos, then because you're so addicted to what you see in these videos, then you are more likely, on the whole, to rationalize it as being right to go out and seek the company of somebody who will act out what you see in the videos. There are statistics that bear that out too, that a lot of men, their relationship falls apart with their wife because what they view on these videos, their wife is not comfortable acting out. And what a shock that is, and no self-respecting woman of character would want to act out the depravity and the degrading and be on the receiving end of such degrading crap. And so then the man goes out and hires a prostitute or finds a woman who and this is the other aspect of it, the women who have seen pornography or have maybe been a part of it and think that behaving in that way and receiving degrading acts like that is the way to receive, the way to get a man. That's how you attract a man. That's the only way you can keep a man these days, is by being willing to subject yourself to degradation and humiliation. This stuff is depraved. Um, all you have to do is read Romans chapter 1 in the Bible, and you get kind of a clear view of what's going on here. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that God rained fire and brimstone down on Sodom and Gomorrah over, and we're celebrating it as something that's just casual meh, you know. And we're permeating society all around us with these videos and these pictures and the most grotesque perversions. And like any addiction, when you start out with looking at porn, nobody starts out looking at bondage and rape or animal porn or, yeah, I went there. Not me. I'm not, no, no, no. But I'm saying, like any addiction, it degrades downward. You know, you always have lines that you say you will never cross. I talked about this with heroin addiction. You know, you say, I will never do this to get my drug. Eventually, you will do that. Porn is an addiction like anything else. You know, in the beginning, you start out looking at Victoria's Secret models, and then it goes to this, and then it goes to that. Next thing you know, this and that, and Victoria's Secret doesn't excite you anymore. And so to get to the same dopamine levels being released in your brain, because that's what it is. You get a dopamine rush when you view pornography and masturbate. Then you go to darker and darker and darker stuff, and next thing you know, like a lot of people, you end up in prison for child pornography. I'm not saying that everybody ends up that way, but you can. It is a progressive evil. Like any addiction. And this is the way Satan works, with a progressive acceptance, and then you rationalize the next thing, and rationalize the next thing, and rationalize the next thing, until you really are plumbing the depths of perversity and depravity, and picking up prostitutes and viewing, you know, bestiality or whatever. You know, God only knows. And our society is a perfect example of this. You know, because we've erased objective morality, and relativism reigns supreme. We're at a point now where people are genuinely starting to argue that pedophilia is just a normal sexual orientation. As long as I'm not, you know, I could be a pedophile, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as I'm not going out and physically acting on it. So it's perfectly okay for me to write stories about my pedophilia fantasies, to draw pictures of it, as long as I'm not showing it to anybody else. But if I'm writing stories about my love affair with a 2-year-old boy, as long as it's only my story and I'm just the one writing it to enjoy it, then there's no sin, there's no wrong. This is incredibly evil, and it's totally ignoring the heart. They don't want to acknowledge that God judges the heart. That's what's being ignored here. And if you remove the heart, the fact that God will one day judge every thought, word, and deed, and judge our hearts, when you remove that, then anything is permitted. You know, in Dostoevsky, he said, I forget it, I think it's the brothers Karamazov or Karamazov. I can never pronounce that novel. I read it one time, but he says, if God does not exist, then everything is permitted. And that's where we're at today. And pornography is just a symptom of that. And what's being called hardcore porn today will be softcore porn in 10 years from now. And as virtual reality takes over, that's where the porn industry is turning. Future projections look at sports, gambling, and pornography as the top 3 tiers of the virtual reality world. I think it's, video games, gambling, and pornography, I believe. Or sports. I think gambling was in there, but pornography is in the top 3 billion-dollar enterprises, industries of the virtual world, virtual reality technology. that's going to be married with it. And it's going to be $1 billion industry. They're already projecting about that. I've read numerous articles about this stuff now, and leading up to this episode. I might talk about this again next week, just from more of a spiritual perspective, how this disintegrates maybe your relationship with God, your spouse. But I think this is a good kicking off point. Again, I apologize for the lighting, but it's the content, what I'm saying, that's important. So just bear with me. It's like I said, I worked, 10, 12 hours today. But I think when it comes to this, we all just want to be, porn. But this is a serious topic. And if we're really honest, almost all of us have struggled with it. According to these statistics, 1 in 5 and 1 in 7 senior pastors and youth pastors have viewed pornography or struggled with it. These are people that are supposedly shepherding congregations spiritually and supposedly giving them direction. So we can't just laugh this off. This is incredibly hardcore, no pun intended. So that's kind of, I just wanted to get that out there. I think this is a serious topic, and not enough can be said about it. And I think only time will tell, really, the true damning effects this has on our society, and on the youth population, especially when virtual reality gets here, because then you won't even have to have sex with your wife. You can literally put on a headset and experience all the physical sensations of having sex with a robot, or a figment of your imagination. Imagine also what this is going to do to procreation. We're already suffering from the effects of a population that does not want to procreate, and then you give them virtual reality where they can have sex with the most vivid depiction of what they really desire, which won't be their wife, I guarantee you that, because every human being has flaws, and if you're really selfish about it, nobody can match up. So it's going to get crazy. We're a society that is committing suicide, as Douglas Murray says. He wrote that book, The Strange Death of Europe, and he might as well have said The Strange Death of America, the West. We are killing ourselves spiritually, physically. We're not procreating. We won't be here much longer, I don't think. So anyway, I'll be back with another episode next week. I'll work on the lighting, and I won't talk as long. Anyway, good night, and God be with you.